Well, boils and ghouls, it's your old pal, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And I want to welcome my good fiends of the Horror Heals podcast. Is horror good for mental wellness? But of course it is. I delight in the delicious deaths of pitiful people on the silver screen. So get ready for a hell of a good time with my new fiends, Corey and Kendall, on the Horror Heals podcast.
Welcome back, Horror Heliacs. It's Corey here, and today we've got a little something special lined up for you. A real trick or treat, let's say. Our guest is Laura Inlow, who knows how to bring the chills and thrills into everyday life. Laura recently started a horror club at Lewis and Clark Community College in Godfrey, Illinois, which, by the way, is next door to perhaps the most haunted town in America, Alton, Illinois. You're about to hear about all the spooky shenanigans Laura has inspired at the college, and how her horror community has been growing, even in a world where some folks are, shall we say, less enthusiastic about things that go bump in the night. Now, for any of you asking, what's in it for me? Let me tell you, Laura's got the lowdown on how horror helped her cope with everything from pandemic stress to the daily grind. Whether you're a horror fan who feels recharged after a scream fest, or just curious about how horror clubs bring people together, Laura's story might just inspire you to find your own horror family. So buckle up, grab your ghost hunting gear, and let's dive in. All right, Laura, welcome to Horror Heals.
Thanks for having me.
Laura and I used to work together on the editorial team at The Telegraph, which is a daily paper in the St. Louis region, but actually is in Alton, Illinois, which is considered one of the most haunted towns in America. And I don't think I ever asked you, when we were working together, but do you put much salt in that?
I tell everybody about it. I've been on several Haunted Alton tours, and I have read all the Troy Taylor books. And I've tried to give a couple people my own haunted tour. I've never really had any experiences until this last tour. I swear a ghost touched my shoulder. But I don't know. Maybe that's just wishful thinking. I'm not sure.
I mean, it's funny that you say that because, I used to do, when I was writing, for the paper, I would, write about the tours and things like that. And I don't even know if it's still standing because it was condemned when I was there. But the McPike Mansion was supposedly considered the haunted place, right? In fact, there was a psychic that came to town and said that he had a dream that somebody was trying to keep him away from there and trying to choke him and all this stuff. But I was actually able to go inside the McPike Mansion with the owner at the time after it was condemned. And we went down into the basement into the coal cellar with the door closed. And so it was just me and this other person who was standing near the door. And I was 10, 15 feet away. And I swear something brushed my shoulder too.
Oh,
so yeah, and it was, I'd see photos come back. This is back when they were still shooting on film, and there'd be those orbs would be all over the images and stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I'm skeptical, but then I'm could there something be there? Could there be energy there? I don't know. Who knows? It's fun anyway.
They still do tours. They can't go in the building itself, but they can go in the cellar. We went there and did dowsing rods and talked to the spirits with Sharon, the owner. So she's still doing that. But my experience was at the Enos Apartments, where they have the Underground Railroad, that big tunnel that goes underneath the road in front of the apartment building. And I wasn't scary, though. It was weird because I was standing in the very back because it's a closed space where they would keep the slaves. And then there would be a lookout in the building to look out across the river for signals that it was safe to send people over from Missouri to Illinois. Then they would keep them in this space until they got a signal from the next place that it was safe to move along. But it was pitch dark in there. And so when they do the tours, they shut all the lights off and everybody goes completely silent. And I was at the very back, so I guess it could have been a giant spider. I don't know. But something touched my shoulder, but it wasn't scary. It was kind of a sense of calm. So I thought that was surprising to me. The girls I was with, swear to God, it wasn't them. And they were very serious, and they were standing in front of me, so I'm not sure how they would have done that. But
when you and I were messaging back and forth about this podcast, you said something that I hadn't really thought about before, but I bet you it's relatively common, is that, during the pandemic, horror movies were good for your mental wellness because it was obviously such a stressful time for everybody. Can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, I mean, I think it helps you put things into perspective. So when the world is scary, it's best not, I have found it's best not to like concentrate on that, because you can go to some really dark places, right? But then you pop on a scary movie and you get the same kind of adrenaline rush that you get from like a roller coaster or visiting a haunted house, but you have that safety net of knowing it's not real. Like, depending on the horror movie you're watching, because I think the ones that are a little bit more realistic, I don't know if you've ever seen the Strangers series. Like, I feel like that could happen. So that one really scares me, and it edges on kind of in a bad way. But things like the campier things, and like Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite. Like, you can dream about Freddy Krueger, but he's not going to kill you. Like, I know that. So, it gives me a scare in the moment, but then I can kind of walk away and realize, okay, well, that's not going to happen in real life.
Yeah, no, it's those home invasion movies. Well, one, Kendall will not watch them at all because like it's way too realistic for him. And I'm not going to watch them by myself at night because that's just silly. Because then all of a sudden you're going to start hearing and seeing things. So like the only time I think I will watch them is one, if I hear really great things about them, because most of them are not great. And I will watch it in a theater because I'm like, okay, well they're not coming to get me in the movie theater, right? But yeah, that's I hear you with those. So what movies did you gravitate toward during the pandemic?
I was a really big fan of Joe Bob Briggs whenever I was in high school, I think. It was probably near the end of the best part of the Monster Vision on TNT series. And so I heard that he had come back with The Last Drive-In on Shudder. So I found some Facebook groups that were into horror, and I found the Joe Bob Mutant Collective group, and they would do watch parties. So every Friday when there was a Joe Bob episode on, they would watch it. And it took me back to my childhood, listening to his commentaries and learning things about movies that I didn't know, and being introduced to things that I wouldn't have picked up on my own. So I watched a lot of that, a lot of B-movie type stuff, B-movie drive-in type stuff. But then I think 2020, I'm bad with dates, but I think it was 2022 or 21, I tried to watch as many horror movies as I possibly could. And I got this poster that was like 100 horror movies. And even though I'd seen some of them before, I didn't allow myself to scratch off that movie unless I saw it that year. I just saw a lot of stuff. I rewatched some old favorites, found a lot of new ones. I don't remember how many I got to, but I was impressed with myself.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah, we try to fit in as many as we can, new, older, or otherwise. Like Kendall's for the last few weeks had just been like clamoring on about, I want to watch the others. I want to watch the others with Nicole Kidman, and so like I rented it, and I've got it on DVD somewhere, but who knows where, So I rented it, and then he fell asleep like a half an hour in, and I'm like, then he wanted to rent it again the following week. I'm like, I'm just gonna buy the digital version because if you fall asleep, then at least we have it. But he made it through that time. We've probably seen that one a few times.
Well, did he end up liking it, or did he fall asleep because he was bored?
He falls because he gets up at 5:00 in the morning, regardless of it's a weekday or weekend. So like by if we start a movie at 8:00, like it's got to be pretty compelling for him to stay awake. So he liked it, yeah, and it was and so I turned it off just because I'm like, I know we're going to be watching this again soon. It was a good rewatch. It was well done. Glad you mentioned Joe Bob, because yeah, that's the same for me. Like that when they started doing his series on Shudder and the holiday specials and stuff, that definitely took me back to when I was a kid. And he's like probably in the top 10 of once for this podcast. And I'm just going to put that out of the universe. Like I've been doing this long enough. I've been able to finagle my way into interviewing, people that I probably, shouldn't have, or some people, couldn't get to. It's like sometimes you just got to trick your way into it. But yeah, he would be awesome because I'm sure he's got I'm sure he's heard stories from fans, and I'm sure he's got some of his own theories about why horror is good for mental wellness and not bad for mental wellness. It's surprised some people when we started talking about doing this as sort of a sister podcast to Family Twist, which is stories all about, family trauma and that kind of stuff. But I mean, I think they do really kind of fit together, because we're seeing crossover already. Like, we did an interview earlier today for Family Twist, and she brought up that movie, The Butterfly Effect, with Ashton Kutcher. And it's just like, there's going to be crossover, and I think they're definitely relatable. We've got past guests from Family Twist that are horror junkies. They're certainly welcome to come on. So, talk to me a little bit about how your kids got into horror movies and horror culture.
Oh, well, they play Roblox, which is probably not the greatest thing to admit as a parent. And they like scary games, and sometimes they're really stupid, but they're all like about the jump scares and stuff. Obviously, I have one that's 9 and one that's 4, and I think you just have to. I watched movies way before I should have, probably horror movies before I should have. My dad swears he does not remember this. But then I'll go pick up my kids, and like the Candyman will be on in the background. I'm like, Exhibit A. Like, you don't realize you're doing it, but you're doing it. But I kind of like gauge like their personalities and their ability to grasp certain things. And I feel like I wouldn't show them necessarily something that I haven't seen, because I just don't know. And different people have different triggers even when they're older, and so I don't want to scar them for life. My older daughter, I think last year when she was 8, I showed her A Nightmare on Elm Street because I think she thought she would think it's kind of funny. Like, that's kind of weird to say, but that's one of the earliest ones that I started with, and she was fine. Like, some of the jump scares got her, but like, she didn't find it realistic, so it wasn't something that scared. If I had shown her something like a home invasion movie or like the Purge movies or something like that, could have really, I would probably keep them away from that sort of thing. But the more unbelievable, the better for her, because I think she's got her feet on solid ground. My younger daughter, I like Halloween and scary movies like all across the board. So, I mean, when my older daughter was younger, we watched a lot of Curious George and the Boo Fest or something. Like, it's super stupid, but it's also kind of cute, like little gateway things. And if you think about it, nursery rhymes are terrifying. Like, I haven't seen the Hansel and Gretel movie, but I know it's supposed to be kind of intense. And there was one on, speaking of Hansel and Gretel, there was a movie last year or the year before, I can't remember, but it's called Night Books. Have you seen that one? It's a Netflix movie. That movie was so fun, and it's a kid's movie, but it was a little bit scary. It's kind of a twist on Hansel and Gretel, so it's interesting. And I also like The Lost Boys, and the movie featured a church's cover of Cry Little Sister that I became obsessed with for like an entire year. And my youngest daughter loved that. So she thought the movie was cool because she liked that song and stuff. So
it's fun, it's cheesy, but there are some like minor, good scares in that one as well. And it holds up too, I think, still, we're talking.
And I thought about showing them that one too, because I'm like, well, okay, but it has a good ending. Like, the kids beat the vampires in the end. Like, things with like kid heroes, I think, are good because it doesn't leave them with a bad taste in their mouth, but they can still get scared while they're watching it, that sort of thing.
When I first started going to horror cons and I was seeing like little kids, with their parents, dressed up as Chucky or Billy the doll from Jigsaw and stuff, I'm like, this is kind of interesting, because I don't have kids. But it's like, once you're in that culture, like almost immediate, it's like you get it. It's like, oh, okay. Like, man, I wish my parents would have introduced me to some of the fun stuff, like, instead of like throwing me into the deep end or whatever. Like, one of my earliest memories is probably like really early on when The Exorcist was first shown on like regular broadcast TV, and it was past my bedtime, but it's like the TV was up loud enough that I could hear all this like weird stuff. So I like crawled out into the hallway, and I'm like trying to peek around the corner, and just the noises, that are coming from the demon, I'm like, terrifying, especially if you can't see it. It's even scarier, I think, to hear it. So yeah,
your imagination does some crazy things.
And I still get really vivid, horrible, like gory nightmares and stuff like to this day. But it's like, obviously they're not bothering me like I was when I was like 5 or 6 years old. But it's just, yeah, I mean, I get it. I think it's for everybody. Your kids get it.
Well, and the The weird thing, you mentioned nightmares. I don't really have nightmares like that anymore. They're like real people things having to do with like my kids more than like scary movie type stuff. And it's funny that you mentioned the reason I asked about Kendall falling asleep during that movie is that I often fall asleep during scary movies, but it's not because they bore me. It's they give me a sense of comfort. They make me think of like on Halloween. I've seen all the Halloween movies like 1,000 times, and I'm a Curse of Thorn purist, which maybe I shouldn't admit to more than my immediate people, but like we'll watch, AMC will run their Fear Fest, and on Halloween they just play like uh one, two, four, and five, and six over and over again. And I watch them over and over on Halloween and just take naps. I take that as my personal holiday from work. Everybody knows they're like, do not ask Laura to work on Halloween because it's not happening.
Now, do you prefer the original cut or the producer's cut of six?
I don't know if I know the difference.
They definitely lean into the Curse of Thorns stuff more in the producer's cut. So yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I've got the box set, so I've watched both or whatever. And
I think it's weird, and I like the new movies too. Let's say that, and I even like the Rob Zombie version because I think they all tell a different story and can be enjoyed for what they are. But like for me, it's scarier that he's related to Lori. So when they kind of changed that and made him just like going after her because she happened to be the babysitter that night, that's less scary for me. Should be more scary since I talked about the strangers and random people killing random people, but like I don't know. I just like the whole tie-in with the family bloodline in that for whatever reason.
And I like the new ones too. It's just it's a different set of films, and it's just like, all right, well, I mean, is it just like unfinished business for this guy after 40? Like, wow, it's a long time to be holding a grudge against a random babysitter, but whatever. They're entertaining.
Exactly. There needs to be a better reason why he wants to kill her so bad.
And then I kind of like that the lead character in the final one was named Corey, and he turned out to be, a psychopath too. So
yeah, that was cool.
So have you introduced your kids to, have you gone to like a horror convention with them?
I took them, not really a horror convention, but I took them to I took Amelia to the Oddities and Curiosities Expo, and I think some of it kind of scared her because those are like, some of the crafts are made from like a lot of taxidermy stuff and dead animals, and that kind of freaked her out. So maybe that was too real for her. I don't really know though of any big horror conventions right here where I am. Like I know the Trans World Convention comes around, but that's really for like haunters and haunted houses and stuff. So, but I would love to find some and go. That would be a dream. So what's like the best thing you've seen at a horror convention? Like what do you like to do when you go to them?
Well, the ones here on the East Coast tend to be, more, I love seeing what people can come up with, like artists can come up with, like using characters and stuff like that we know, but like using different mediums, things like that. That's fun. Love interacting with the fans, and then, I'm an autograph hound, so like getting the autographs is great. What I liked about the California cons, though, is because you're in Southern California and you're LA, they're kind of a hybrid of those, but also like the makeup artists and stuff like that. So they're doing like full body makeup and things like that. And people will bring like their little museum of like weird art and curiosities, and you'll see more like real costumes and props and things like that. So those are a lot of fun. It's kind of a hodgepodge of like, horror museum / horror celebrity convention. The one that out here that I really, really love is called Monster Mania, and they do 3 or 4 a year. And actually, we're interviewing the founder of that tomorrow, and I'm kind of curious. I don't know what the origin is, but it's something he does with his 2 adult sons, and I think his grandkids are involved now too, so it's sort of become like a family business. It takes place at a hotel in Jersey, and it's just like wall-to-wall horror fanatics. It's just, I mean, you could just go and sit in the lobby if you like to people watch, and just you'll see a show for sure. So what is the Halloween season like at your house?
Oh geez, I wish I had. I think part of the reason I'm kind of drawn to the online community is I don't really have as much of one here, which is why I tried to start that club at Lewis and Clark, LC Scares, because I'm trying to find my people still. Because my family will watch horror movies with me, but my kids are a little young, so they're not as into it. But we do have a Halloween parade in our neighborhood, and it's kind of a small neighborhood, but it's like trick or treating but backward. So like the people that hand out candy sit along the parade route. So instead of us throwing candy to them, the parade goes through and it's all the kids in costume. And we stop the parade because it's kind of small, and then the people give us candy, and then they still do trick or treating. And I do think that in general, the people in the Alton area like Halloween. I don't know if that was your experience when you were here, but like in college, I had like friends from college who lived up near Chicago come down because they said Halloween was just different in Alton. So, but I don't really have much for comparison because I've been here all my life. So it's just like, lots of scary movies. I'll take a week off. We used to do haunted houses. So I did take Amelia, my 9-year-old, to Raging Rivers this year on a whim. They did a haunted house in the Palisades Preserve Woods. I did not dress for the occasion, and I was wearing flip-flops, and it's on a trail, and loud noises frighten me. So like I hate chainsaws when they come after you with a chainsaw. I know it's not real. They don't have a chain on them, but still. And I told her, I'm like, if one happened, we're holding hands and she's scared and she's holding on to me. Then a chainsaw guy pops out of the woods and she just took off. She left me. I was like, oh my God. I was trying to keep up, but I'm slow and I had flip-flops on. And she just left me to die. So I'm like, if that would have been real, you would have left me. So I'm hoping to get her into more of that kind of stuff. And I think she had a good time.
I think the St. Louis region is like traditionally been like one of the bigger haunted house towns. Definitely was, when I was younger. I don't know how many they have now. And I haven't been back for Halloween in several years, but now I'm kind of doing this thing where I'm going to, rather than like go to St. Louis for like a long weekend and just feel like wrecked by the time I get back home because it's go, 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 I'm going to go for a few weeks at a time because I've got that, flexibility with my work. And so I would love to come for Halloween this year because my niece turned 16 the week after. So if I could like fit that in, I don't think she's been to one of the real like hardcore haunted houses like in St. Louis, but we did take her older siblings when they were like, I don't know, 15, 16. One of the actors, like before we got in there, pulled Kendall aside and said, "What's that boy's name?" And we told him his name was Jake. And we get halfway through the thing and Jake, we're coming. Oh, he flipped out. I mean, they do it really, really well there. It was one of these indoor-outdoor ones years ago. They used to do press nights, and so you would go, and there would only be like the media there. And I took our one of our other former coworkers, Georgia, and we were going through like this huge industrial metal pipe, and of course that's when the chainsaw guy pops out, and like I grabbed her arm, and I literally just like pulled her off her feet and carried her until we could get away. It's just because when you're in that moment, yeah, it's fake, but it still feels like you're in a horror movie all of a sudden. It's just reality and unreality merge pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, I when I was a little kid, one of my very first memories is having to be taken off of the Haunted Mansion ride in Disneyland when I was 5 years old. I only made it to, I don't know if you've ever been on any of them before, but you get on, it's like, you're essentially in an elevator, but like the walls are stretching, but it's, Disney magic, right? They had to stop the beginning of the ride because you're not actually on the ride yet and take me out. I don't know how bad my freak out was, but bad enough for them to stop the ride. But then I think when I started, getting that, like it's the thrill of going on a roller coaster and watching a horror movie where it's like, deep down, nothing horrible is going to happen to you, but it's exhilarating and scary in the moment. And it's like, oh, and then it's over. Like a roller coaster's over in 1 minute, or the horror movie's over in 90 minutes. And yeah, I think that's when I started to realize, I was probably like 13 or 14 years old, like, yeah, it's okay to be scared for a little while because this isn't real. And the real world's got enough scary stuff, that you could be really scared about. So let's enjoy this part of being scared.
Right. And when it's real, you get the adrenaline, but then like there isn't the happiness that comes afterward. When it's fake, like on a roller coaster, it's always funny because if somebody goes on a roller coaster with me, like I'm calm on the way up and then I scream all the way down. and then I laugh on the way up, and then I scream on the way down. And it's just like a constant until the ride is over, and then you just feel like that elation and you want to do it again. So that's the same with horror movies if it's a good one, especially.
Do you have a favorite final girl or final boy?
Oh my gosh, I can't remember what that movie is called. It's about the board game company, and the girl marries into the board
Ready
game
or Not.
company. What
Yeah.
the heck is that? Yes, Ready or Not. I don't know why I came up on a blank, but I like Grace. You know, she starts out as this like kind of, she's been alone for so long, and you know, she's independent, but she seems kind of like innocent, and she's excited to be joining this family and having her people, and then she just turns into this complete badass, and it's amazing. It's funny that you mentioned Final Girls, because you know, now I'm working in marketing and PR at a community college, and there's this organization called the National Council for Marketing and PR. And I did a leadership institute with them like 2 summers ago. And at the end of this leadership institute, we have to give a presentation on anything we want having to do with leadership. I'm like, anything we want? And they're like, yeah, anything you want. So sorry, my cat's rubbing on my computer. So I did a presentation on the leadership qualities of final girls. And I pulled like as many as I could find, and talked about like why they would make a good leader, like why other people might have survived if they did what the final girl did.
I love that.
I've been kind of into that. And then there are a couple of books about final girls, including like the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, which is pretty interesting. And I think, you know, I don't know if that's his best book. I do like books by Grady Hendrix. But I liked it because it reminds me of all these horror movies. Like there are little like fan drop type mentions throughout the book, like the names of characters, and are usually like the actresses that portrayed major final girls and that sort of thing. So I don't know if I have a favorite. I always default to Laurie too, because, you know, Halloween is a classic. So
I don't know. When I asked you that, just, and maybe it was because you mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street, which is also one of my favorites, but Nancy, you know, came to mind immediately, especially because, you know, then she comes back and is such a badass in part 3. But yeah, I think if somebody like pinned me down, I'd have a hard time, you know, probably coming.
Right, because I probably, you know, I'd throw Nancy in that mix for sure.
So what is your idea about behind the horror club for Lewis and Clark?
It's pretty loose right now because, like I said, I like all things horror. So I kind of just, you know, I thought, let's see if I can find some people around here that like the same thing. We have a huge video game club on campus, and I do enjoy horror video games, although I don't play video games very well. I can do like Mario, forward, up, jump, right? But like you put a joystick in there and have it turn 360. Like I've played Left 4 Dead before, and like a zombie comes up on me and I scream, and then I just like spray bullets everywhere and kill everybody in my party because I can't aim. So, but I'll stream people playing video games. And then I had been reading a lot. So I said in, you know, 21 and 22, I watched a lot of movies. I missed a lot in 23 because I was reading a lot of horror books instead. There are a bunch of horror podcasts I listen to, like the editor of Rue Morgue does the Faculty of Horror, which is really great. You know, serial killer podcasts. I throw those in there too, even though they're real. Those people are not around, at least those people. My husband works at Miniature Market in St. Louis, and it's a big board game warehouse. I don't know if you know a lot about board gaming, but there are like infinite numbers of horror board games.
I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen more of that popping up in my social feeds. I know like there's like a House of Thousand Corpses game that just came out, I think, and more horror video games popping up too. I just thought the Killer Clowns from Outer Space game just came out. I tried playing I have the Friday the 13th one for Xbox, and tried playing that. I'm horrible at it too. I'm okay at like pinball, so I'm glad to see more horror pinball popping up. I just got to play the Jaws pinball machine for the first time last weekend, and that was pretty cool.
Well, you need to try a tabletop game. So he's got it's based on the movie Halloween, and I haven't played it yet, but like there's a lot of like Arkham Horror is based on the H.P. Lovecraft universe. You can do like a D&D type role play game with that too, or you can play a tabletop game, and there's card games with that. And there's one called Letters from Whitechapel, where one person plays Jack the Ripper and the others are investigators, and he moves around the board like on his own board. So like he's somewhere in the grid, but you can't see him, and you have to like go look for clues and find Jack the Ripper. But it's, yeah. There's one called Horrified, which is all like universal monsters, and you play together as a group to try and kill the universal monsters that all have different powers, and it's fun. So yeah, the club is just about like anything and everything. And so I don't really know what's going to come of it yet. I think it's going to depend on the students, really. I had a lot of interest, but we're going to try again at Fall Fest because some of those students were students that were graduating. So we'll see who we get in the fall. And then I was just kind of going to throw everything at them and see what they wanted to do. But I know some of them were interested in like hosting a haunted house at Lewis and Clark as an event. And some of them wanted to take like field trips to a haunted house, and they wanted to do like a book club and like movie screenings. I don't know if you ever met Steve Higgins. He works at Lewis and Clark. He's a faculty member. He's really into pop culture. Like he's a huge Doctor Who fan, and he teaches a comic book class. And he's been working closely with an alum of ours named Kevin Edwards, who runs the Always Late TV Movie Awards that are on our college campus. And he has like original screenings, or he started that this year. And so there were a couple horror movies that were at the awards this year, and he's going to see if the kids would be interested, if he could get like the directors of some of those movies to like come out and talk to us about like how to make a horror movie and like how to stand out from other horror movies and that sort of thing. So I don't know. It's all over the gamut, but I like it all.
Very
so
cool.
I'm
Yeah,
really
well, definitely keep me in the loop
picky
as to what's happening, because I do visit 2 or 3 times a year, and I would love to get back and see some of the haunted / horror related stuff that's happening in the Midwest, because there's definitely a lot of cool stuff there for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to talk all things horror.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out one of those horror conventions because I know I'm missing out. I've been to a Comic-Con, but never a horror
It's a
convention.
really different vibe. Chill. It's inviting. It's welcoming. Well, keep the horror game going. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Wow, Laura, what an awesome chat. You've got us all inspired to dive into haunted houses, horror movies, and maybe even start our own horror clubs. And folks, don't you love how Laura found a way to bring people together and find that little slice of horror joy? It's like horror therapy, one scream at a time. So, before you switch off, if you got a kick out of today's episode, and let's be real, we know you did, go ahead and hit that share button. Spread the Horror Heals love with your friends, family, or that one neighbor who swears they don't get scared until they do. And remember, folks, when someone begs for their life with the question, horror is good for my mental wellness, you step right up and reply, of course it is. The Horror Heals podcast is presented and produced by How the Cow Ate the Cabbage LLC.